And we're back. So where last we left off in our lovely adventure, I'm just going to kick off my project again. I saved it up on GitHub. We added a plane to our project. So if I go back to Unity, and if I kick off my COMP305 Winter 2016 Mail Pilot demo that we're doing, and it comes up, I want to make sure, sometimes what I want to do is double click on my main scene. Typically it'll open, but if I double click onto it, it'll open this main scene, right? Okay, cool. So I've got my plane and I've got my ocean, right? And I've got some pretty good motion in here. What I want to do is, and by the way, we handled really two of the most important things: a background to give us the illusion that something is moving, and the scrolling background is one of the requirements in your assignment number 1. I'm asking you to make it go right and left. Thank you. Like, don't scroll it from the top down, because scrolling from the top down, it means you can just replace my assets with your assets and use my code and everything's good. I want you to make it go right and left, okay? So that means you're going to make a side scroller, all right? You're not going to make a top scroller. If you're making a top scroller, meh, what are you learning, right? You're just copying my code, right? And copying and just replacing the assets with something else. So make a side scroller, which means there's going to be some different code you have to do. Like if you look at this, the stuff we did in MonoDevelop, do I have to change this code? Yeah, because now I'm going to make this will be vertical. Not a lot of changes now, mind you, but some changes right here for my plane. And the check bounds method is going to be different because you're going to be checking up and down as opposed to left and right, right? You're going to be doing that. The ocean controller is going to be different because my resetting, I reset the ocean up and down, you're going to be resetting your background right and left, right? So lots of little changes that go on that it gives you enough challenge. You know how to do this way, you should know how to do the other way. But it'll give you enough challenge to figure this out. One of the challenges that people have when they make a side scroller or any kind of scrolling, continuous scrolling game or endless scroller is that the background is not tiled properly. You'll notice a bit of a glitch. It'll jump. And what we want to try and do is find a tiled background that'll work for a scrolling game. And the way to do that, of course, is to look it up, right? So if I say, you know, tiled background for 2D, right? It has some image. There's some images up there that give you tiled backgrounds that you can kind of use. Like this one's not bad. This one looks pretty good. Now this one is for some kind of platformer. Be careful because remember you're making a game, and if you use this one, I'm just going to choose this one for a second, right? You're not going to have a lot of unless your object is flying. Let's see if I can get in there. Right? Be careful with this one. Unless your player is flying, you're only going to be limited. No, this is no good. You're only going to be limited in this particular case to from the ground to the bottom of the ground, like very limited motion up and down, because you can't be up here. Unless your player is like a flying player, he can't move up here, right? That's one thing you can't do because that doesn't make any sense, and I'll dock marks from you for that. So watch what your background looks like. If your background looks like this, make sure your player looks realistic when he's moving around it. Remember, you're not making a platformer, right? Although you could make it appear that he's on a platformer, right? Your platform assignment is next, assignment 2. So don't kill yourself trying to make it a platformer. Pick a background that makes sense. Some people pick some kind of road, right? A road that goes right and left, or they pick some other kind of space background or whatever because they want to kind of create a space background. But something that repeats is what you want to find, and something that tiles nicely so that you don't see the beginning and the end. This one would tile badly. How come? Because you see, there's half a tree here. So when you go to this side, all of a sudden half a tree appears, right? Because it goes from this side and it goes to the end and then half a tree again. And it would kind of skip, like your background would look kind of weird, right? Actually, to be honest with you, even our background here skips a little bit. Let's see how this looks, but it's very mild. It's very, very subtle. So here, tell me when it skips. See it? See it? So subtle, it's mild, right? Don't want to get worse than this. This is bad. All right, but it's not so bad that it's undoable. You probably wouldn't notice unless I pointed it out, right? That's what I want your background to look like. If your background skips, that means you haven't picked a background that is continuous, or it's not a tile. It looks like someone's drawn a background, and one way to do it also is to put a space between the beginning and the end. Like, for example, I might have like some kind of sky if I'm flying, and I have some clouds. But guess what? When I first start my background and when I end my background, there's no clouds, just blue. Looks like it's continuous, right? But actually it's not, right? So there's different ways of doing that, that background. Some people don't put any detail in their background. That doesn't satisfy my requirements. My requirements say you must have a scrolling background, all right? If your background scrolling is one solid color, how can I tell that you're scrolling? It doesn't look like anything's happening, right? You're not, it looks like you're not moving at all, actually, right? It's an illusion. So you have to create this illusion with some kind of scrolling background, some kind of repeating background over and over again. And there's different techniques to do that. Okay. Let's add in our another object. We're going to add in our island. And let's do the same thing. So we're going to go into our sprites. And this time I'm just going to drag and drop, just like we did last time. So I'm going to take my island, but I need to modify my island. I got to change my units to 1, because it can't be, not 1100, 1 pixels per unit, right? And I want to change my filter mode from bilinear to point. And I want to keep everything else the same and click on apply. Good, there's my island. Now my island's been modified. I want to drag and drop my island sprite into my hierarchy like this, right? Here's my island. I'm going to rename this thing with a capital I, island, just to keep the same as everything else. There we go, island. So ocean, plane, island. Notice how my island is here, but that's not what I want my island to do. I want my island to start off screen. In fact, I want it to start somewhere up here. And if I zoom into my island to see, I want to be pretty accurate. So maybe around there. And if I notice, it's around 270 pixels. And then what I want my island to do, right, is when it falls down, similar to my ocean, it's going to come to here, to this point, which is going to be off screen. If you have, by the way, if you have Unity 4.x, you won't be able to see the screen boundary, the camera. So it's minus 270. So minus 270 and 270 looks like the boundaries. That looks identical to my ocean script. Identical. Like everything's the same. It falls and it resets every single time, right? That's one of the things that are identical. So I can almost copy my ocean script. Hint, hint, if I'm copying a script, what should I be doing? I should be inheriting from it, right? Because everything that my island can do, my ocean is doing, and then some, which means I can inherit from ocean and then add additional properties from my island. I could do that. But how can I inherit from a script? We're not going to talk about it in this session, and we're not going to talk about it for assignment 1. It's much more complex than you think, right? So let's leave it alone and just copy the script for now. So we have get an understanding of what's happening, and later on, we will instead of copying our script, we'll make it so that we create a new one, or we inherit one. Okay, so here's our plane controller, and here's our ocean controller. I'm going to right-click, and if you notice, there's some options to create a new one. That's what I'm going to do here. I'm going to do the same thing as last time. So create a new C# script. And I'm going to call this thing island controller. This is a very simple way of doing it, by the way. And again, I'm going to take my island controller and attach to my island by dragging and dropping. There we go. There's my island controller. But I'm going to take my ocean script. Go to my own ocean script here. And I'm going to grab everything that's inside my ocean controller and all the way to the bottom. So anything between these two curly braces, I'm going to grab everything, copy paste. So I'm pretty much going to use everything, right? I'm just going to have to change a couple things. And again, this you think about when I'm doing this, you're thinking about inheritance, which you should be thinking. You're like, wow, this is so inefficient. How come he's not using inheritance? You should be thinking that, right? But we're going to talk about inheritance later. This is too much for you right now. All right, so we're taking all this stuff, copying it. And what I want to do, go back here, is double-click on my island script, right? And I want to go between these two braces here and paste it. Now I have a script for my island. Okay, some things don't apply, right? For example, we said instead of minus 480 and 480, right? We don't want that. We want to minus 270 and 270. So this is minus 270. We change that number. Almost like I can make that a variable instead of hard coding it. That's another thing I'm thinking about as I'm doing my script. I'm putting it out there to you guys, so I want you to think about when you're making your script, saying, can I make this something I can reuse? Your mind as a developer should be thinking that, right? And same thing over here, same number, 270 and 270, right? So I can say, 270F. So I'm going to kind of reset it to 270, and when it gets to minus 270, it's going to reset. Okay, cool. So that's what I wanted to do. And if you just leave it like this, and we'll just change some of the comments. So it says reset the island sprite to the top, right? If I leave it the same, one thing is really cool. My speed should be 5 and match the ocean. Why? Because my island can't go faster than the ocean. That doesn't make any sense. It would look weird, right? And it can't go slower than the ocean. That means that the ocean would be going faster than the island. That makes weird sense too. So it's almost like the ocean and the island are like one. They look like one object, right? Which is what it should look like. Because the ocean and the island, when your plane flies over the ocean and the island, fixed objects on the ground plane should look like they're moving together, right? Okay, cool. So that's one thing. If I was to attach this or run this thing right now, it's pretty cool. One thing I want to caution you on is my island. Notice how my order and layer is 0. Could leave it there, but I highly recommend you make it 1. But if we make our island 1, should my plane go under the island or over the island? Over the island, right? Which means my plane, which already has an order and layer of 1, should go to 2, right? So that way everything is ordered and they're actually ordered properly, right? Otherwise, you're going to have some weird. And if you get that in your game, if you say that, why is my plane going underneath this? Because of your order and layer. That's the reason why it's happening, okay? So if I press play now, the way it is, because I've copied my script, right? You could almost say I could apply my ocean script the way it is to my plane, modifying a couple of options. I could. Let's check it out. Play. There's my ocean on my island, but guess what? It just keeps going like this. That doesn't make it. That's not fun, right? That's not fun, right? I want to make it so that it gives me a random X position on the top. Let's see what's really happening on if I press play. Let's see what's really happening in the scene view. Look, here's my ocean and then or my island, and then it just resets with my ocean, but it resets the exact same position, right? Notice how it resets a lot faster than my ocean does. So my ocean resets and my island resets. That's what's really happening in the background. It's an illusion that my ocean and my island are tied together. They're moving at the same speed, so it makes it look the same. But we want to make it so that it appears in a random location on the top of my screen. Okay, let's stop. That means that my ocean, my island, right, should appear in random position starting at, as an example, let's say minus 290, or in this particular case, maybe minus 287 for my island, because my island is a little bit different than my plane, right? See, minus 287, let's say. I don't think I want to start, I don't want to start it here because that would be off screen, right? I don't want to start my islands off screen. Everything I want to start on screen. So here, and then I want to go to the other side, right? I want to go to the other side of my screen here. And I want to put my island to the other side. So minus 287, and it looks like 290. Because my island is a weird shape, right? And it's not that it's a weird shape. It's just that 289 might be the right thing. So maybe 288 or 289 might be right. Let me just check that one more time. Because my island is different than my plane. It has a little bit of different transparency around this side compared to this side. This is kind of more squarish, and this is more roundish on this side. So just to play with the mechanics, the way it would look proper, we'd probably want to pull it. So again, I'm sitting at minus 288. I'm just testing this position, right? Minus 288. That looks okay. And then let's see if I can go to 288 on this side, right? So yeah, 288 looks like the right number. Minus 288 and 288. Okay, cool. And I'll just reset this thing back to my position would be 0. Right? So minus 288 and 288. So what I want to do is I want to create a random X position. How do I do that? Any ideas? Random.range. I like the random.range. I want to do it probably here, right? In my reset. When I reset my island, it's going to be reset here. So see where it says here 0. That's where my random range is going to be, right? And we can make this is just a floating point number that we can assign locally, right? Because we don't care. We don't care if it's recreated every time it's reset. It only resets every time the island gets down, so that's not a big draw. Or you could make it a private variable if you wanted to, but why? So we can say var. I want to use the var keyword, or I can just, because actually var works in C#, believe it or not, just like it does in JavaScript. But we don't need to do that. We just have to declare its type. So float, and then we're going to say, we'll call this thing X, or position. My X position, right, is going to be a random range, like you said. So if I go random.range with my random range, if I say min and max. So the minimum, I just put it right in here, the minimum number and the maximum number. So it's minus 288F. It's got to be floating points to 288F, right? That's my random range. We're going to get a random, that's how you do random numbers here, right? For Unity, it's very, very easy. That's my random X position. So now I'm going to take my X position here and put it in here in my vector2 object, right? So that's what's going to be added into the transform. So I'm going to take my X position, copy it, and replace the 0 with my X position, right? So I'm going to get a random number here. I'm going to put it inside. Every time it resets, I'm going to get a random position for my island. Let's see if this works, if I made a mistake. And I'll press play. And then it starts there, and then it starts over there, and it starts here. And notice how it starts in different positions. So now it looks like I'm flying over different islands. And the island is going to be our target. That's the place we want to get to, right? So when we hit the island, that's why it's called mail pilot, we're going to pick up some mail, or some points, if you will. And when we pick up some points, we're going to add to our score. That's what we're going to do, right? So that's the item that's going to make us gain points, right? And notice how, if I was to go back to the scene view, it looks a lot different, doesn't it? So it goes over here, now it starts over here, and it's a random position off screen. And it's going to start off screen and kind of float into the screen randomly, right? And that's what you should see. Any questions around this? So I'm reusing all of my objects so far. I'm reusing my plane's not going to be off screen. It's always staying on screen. And notice if I was to play in the game, I can move my plane around too to make it look like I want to get it. So I got my plane right there, and then I come over here, and I'm over here, right? Notice I don't have complete control of my plane. It's a bit of drift because of the way I've programmed how long I'm holding my key gives me more drift, which just kind of makes it more interesting for me, right? As opposed to exact movement. I could make it exact movement, but this way I'm adding a bit of drift depending on how long I hold my keyboard, right? My keys my keyboard, right? So it's not bad. It looks like we're making this 2D game. Any questions before we end for today, right? Next day, what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a cloud. We're going to use the clouds to come by, and the clouds are dangerous clouds. These dangerous clouds will destroy my plane, right? That's what they're going to do. They're full of lightning, right? Or some kind of thunder, or maybe some kind of, they're chemical clouds, biochemical clouds that kill our plane and our pilot. Who knows? We'll make it up, right? But these clouds are going to be our enemies. And we're going to do that. But the thing is, we're going to make a cloud object. And this is the funny thing. The next part is really important. Is we're going to make each cloud object this hazard, if you will. If you look at the video online, the tutorial, they talk about hazards, and the hazards online are these asteroids. Here, our hazards are going to be cloud, and our clouds are going to be able to cross over because in real life, clouds can cross. But not so with like cars or other planes or other enemies or whatever. They don't cross over each other, right? So I'm going to caution you against doing that for your game. Please don't let your other objects cross over each other. And there's a little bit of code you got to put in there to make it work. All right, any questions around what we've done today? I'm going to save this in the Git repository. So we've added today we've added our plane, we've added some boundaries and our ocean and our island, and we've noticed some similarities between our ocean and our island in terms of our script. Our script was almost identical, and this can be a bad thing. But we'll talk about how we can make it a good thing. All right, see you next day.
Excuse me, sir.